Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to be doing a deep dive on cybersecurity in Germany.
Ooh, Germany.
Yeah, we've got this pretty fascinating report from 2020,
Okay.
and it was commissioned by the German Federal Ministry of the Interior, Building, and Home Affairs.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
It is basically their game plan for dealing with all these digital threats out there.
Right.
But what I thought was so cool about this report is that it profiles hundreds of different organizations.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like universities and startups and government agencies,
Uh-huh.
all these players in the German cybersecurity world.
So it's like a who's who of German cybersecurity.
Exactly. And it's not just, a list of names and addresses. It actually digs into how all these different players are working together.
Collaboration, huh?
Yeah, that seems to be like the big theme here.
Yeah, that's one of the key takeaways that I got from reading this report is that it's not just, one person or one organization.
Right. It's not like the movies where it's just like, a lone wolf hacker in a hoodie saving the day.
Right, exactly.
Cybersecurity is a team sport.
Yeah, for sure. And it's really impressive to see just the sheer scale of the effort that Germany is putting into this.
Yeah.
The report actually has this really cool visualization where it shows the growth of cybersecurity organizations over time.
Okay.
And back in the 80s, you could practically count them on one hand.
Oh, wow.
But then after 2015, things just exploded.
Really?
Yeah, there was this dramatic increase, almost exponential, in the number of groups dedicated to fighting cyber threats.
Exponential growth.
Hmm.
Huh. I wonder what happened in 2015 that sort of triggered that.
Right. Yeah, like what was the turning point there?
Yeah.
I'm sure it was probably a combination of things.
Yeah. I mean, you had some high-profile cyber attacks hitting the news around that time, and data breaches were becoming more common.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there was just a growing awareness that, our digital lives are incredibly vulnerable.
Right. Yeah, like we're so reliant on technology now that it's kind of scary to think about how vulnerable we are. Exactly. And it seems like Germany just decided to get serious about cybersecurity, and that seriousness is reflected in this huge growth in organizations.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah.
So we've got all these experts, all these organizations popping up. But where is all this activity concentrated? Is it all happening in Berlin, or are things more spread out?
Well, that's a good question.
Yeah.
And the report actually highlights this sort of urban-rural divide that we see in many countries.
Okay.
So, as you might expect, major cities like Berlin are hotspots.
Right. Yeah, all the tech companies and everything are there.
Exactly. You've got startups, you've got tech giants setting up shop, and of course the federal government being in Berlin draws in a lot of agencies and organizations.
Uh-huh. But I guess that means that rural areas are kind of left behind.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's a trend that we see pretty much everywhere.
Yeah.
There's a much lower density of cybersecurity activity outside of those major urban centers.
Right. So we've got this uneven distribution, but at least there are a lot of different types of players in the mix.
Yeah.
Like the report breaks them down into four main categories: civil society, academia, industry, and government.
Exactly. And each of those groups brings something unique to the table.
I like that. I like that analogy. So let's imagine like a real world scenario. Okay. Let's say there's a major cyber attack on a German bank.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, this is Saturday morning. People are panicking.
Right.
Who are the key players here, and what are their roles in trying to mitigate this crisis?
Okay, so first responders, you've got the bank's internal security team, of course.
Right. So that would fall under the industry category.
Exactly. They're the first line of defense trying to contain the breach and figure out what's going on.
Okay, so they're like in damage control mode, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so who else is getting involved at this point?
Well, simultaneously, they're probably reaching out to the Federal Office for Information Security, or BSI.
Okay.
Which is a key government agency responsible for national cybersecurity.
All right, so the BSI is kind of like the big guns coming in.
Exactly. They're going to provide expert guidance and coordinate with other agencies.
Got it.
And they might even involve law enforcement if it looks like a criminal attack.
Right, so we've got industry and government working hand in hand here.
Mm-hmm.
Where do academia and civil society fit into this picture?
Well, let's say the attackers used like a brand new type of malware,
Sure.
something that nobody's ever seen before.
Oh.
This is where those academic researchers from institutions like the Technical University of Munich or the Ruhr University Bochum might get called in.
Right, they're like the code breakers.
Exactly. They're going to analyze the malware, understand how it works, and try to develop countermeasures.
So the digital detectives.
Exactly. And then you've got civil society organizations playing a crucial role in informing and educating the public.
Okay.
So you might have groups like Verbrocherzentralen stepping up to provide advice to consumers on how to protect their accounts. Or you might have organizations like Bundes gegen Cybermobbing offering support to individuals who might experience online harassment in the wake of this attack.
Right, so they're kind of like the support system, the people who are helping the victims.
Exactly.
So in this scenario, we see all four groups working together, each contributing their expertise to try to address this crisis.
Right. It's like a well-oiled machine when it works properly.
I like it, but I bet it doesn't always run so smoothly in reality.
You're absolutely right. Maintaining that level of coordination and collaboration is a constant challenge, and that brings us to some of the key insights and themes that the report digs into.
Okay.
But I think that's the story for part 2 of our deep dive.
Ooh, cliffhanger.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've established that Germany takes cybersecurity very seriously. They've got this whole network of organizations working together. But I'm guessing there are still some major challenges, right?
Oh, absolutely. The report definitely doesn't shy away from the challenges they're facing, and one of the biggest ones is the skills gap.
The skills gap.
Yeah. Basically, there just aren't enough qualified people to fill all the open cybersecurity positions.
Wow.
It's a problem pretty much everywhere, but it's especially bad in Germany because the demand for cybersecurity professionals is just skyrocketing.
So it's like a classic case of supply and demand, but with, potentially disastrous consequences.
Right.
Because if there aren't enough experts to go around, who's going to protect us from all the bad guys out there?
Exactly. And the report points out that it's not just about finding people who can, hack into systems.
Right. It's more than just that.
The field is so diverse. You need people who specialize in security architecture, data protection, risk management. It's a whole ecosystem of different skills.
So how is Germany trying to close this gap? Are they just like throwing money at universities and hoping for the best?
Well, investing in education is definitely a big part of it.
Yeah.
The report talks about all these new cybersecurity programs that are popping up at universities, both undergraduate and graduate level. They're trying to train as many qualified professionals as they can, as quickly as they can, but it's not just about quantity, it's also about quality.
Right.
And making sure that these programs are actually preparing students for the real-world challenges of cybersecurity.
And I imagine diversity is a big part of that as well, right?
Absolutely. The report specifically calls out the underrepresentation of women in the field.
Really?
Yeah, there's a study in 2019 by Bitkom, which is a German industry association.
Okay.
And they found that only 1 in 7 IT job applicants were women.
Wow, 1 in 7. That's a pretty big gap.
Yeah, it's a huge problem.
So what are they doing to try to attract more women to cybersecurity?
Well, the report suggests a multi-pronged approach.
Okay.
So they're talking about things like mentorship programs, scholarships specifically for women in cybersecurity, and networking opportunities to help women connect with each other. But it also goes beyond that. They're emphasizing the need for a more inclusive culture in the tech industry as a whole.
So it's not just about getting women in the door. It's about making sure that they feel welcome and supported once they're there.
Exactly. And it's not just about gender diversity either.
Right.
They want to bring in people from all sorts of different backgrounds, different ethnicities, different socioeconomic backgrounds, even different neurodiversity.
Oh, wow.
The idea is that a more diverse workforce will lead to more creative and innovative solutions.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Different perspectives lead to better problem solving.
Exactly.
So the report also talks about starting cybersecurity education much earlier, like in schools.
Yeah, that's a really interesting part of the German approach. They're not waiting until university to start teaching kids about cybersecurity.
Wow.
They've got this government initiative called Digital Pact Schule,
Okay.
which is basically equipping schools with technology and training teachers to integrate digital literacy, including cybersecurity, into their curriculums.
So it's like teaching kids about digital hygiene.
Exactly, like washing your hands, brushing your teeth.
Yeah.
But for the digital world...
But is it really possible to teach young kids about these complex topics, like phishing and malware?
Well, it's all about starting with the basics and building up from there.
Right.
So they're not teaching them how to code or how to hack into systems or anything like that.
Right.
But they are teaching them about things like creating strong passwords, recognizing suspicious emails, and just thinking critically about the information they see online.
So it's more about awareness and developing those good habits early on.
Exactly.
I love that approach. Give them the tools that they need to stay safe online.
Mm-hmm.
But let's be realistic. Even with all the education in the world, there are still people who are going to fall victim to cyberbullying, online scams, and other forms of digital harm.
Right.
So what's being done to help those individuals?
That's where organizations like Bundesgegen Cybermobbing and Cybermobbing Hilfe come in.
Yeah.
They're doing incredible work to support victims of cyberbullying, raise awareness about the issue, and educate young people about online behavior.
So it's not just about protecting systems and data, it's also about protecting people.
Exactly. Cybersecurity is about human well-being, too.
For sure. And that's where the report's focus on consumer protection is so important.
Right. They highlight organizations like Verbraucherzentralen,
Okay.
which offer information and advice to consumers on a wide range of issues, including cybersecurity.
Yeah.
So they give tips on everything from choosing secure websites to spotting phishing emails to reporting online scams.
So they're kind of like a one-stop shop for all your cybersecurity needs.
Exactly.
That's great. But how do they reach the people who might not even be aware of these resources?
That's where media outlets come in.
Yeah.
The report mentions websites and blogs like golem.de and Highs Security,
Okay.
which are specifically dedicated to reporting on cybersecurity news and developments. They keep the public informed about the latest threats, vulnerabilities, best practices. It's all about raising awareness and keeping cybersecurity on people's radar.
Okay, so we've got consumer protection, public awareness. What about protecting the really big stuff, like power grids and hospitals?
Yes, the critical infrastructure.
Yeah.
So in Germany, they have a term for this. They call it kritis.
Kritis.
Yeah, it stands for kritische Infrastrukturen, which basically means critical infrastructures.
Okay.
And these are all the essential services that keep society running, things like power plants, transportation systems, telecommunications, networks, hospitals, you name it.
Yeah, those are the things you really don't want hackers messing with.
Exactly. And the German government has implemented some pretty strict regulations to protect these critical systems.
Like what?
Well, for example, they have the IT-Sicherheitsgesetz, which is the IT Security Act,
Okay.
and the NIS-Richtlinie, which is the NIS Directive.
Right.
And these laws establish security requirements and reporting obligations for operators of critical infrastructure.
So they're basically saying if you're responsible for keeping the lights on or the hospitals running, you better have your cybersecurity game on point.
Exactly. It's not just about reacting to threats either. It's about proactively identifying vulnerabilities, implementing strong security measures, and having a plan in place to respond quickly and effectively if something does happen.
So it's a multi-layered approach with everyone from individual consumers to government agencies playing a role.
Right.
But even with all these safeguards in place, it seems like the bad guys are always one step ahead. Are there any glimmers of hope on the horizon? Anything that makes you optimistic about the future of cybersecurity?
Well, one thing that the report highlights is the role of startups in driving innovation.
Okay.
Germany has this really vibrant startup ecosystem, and a lot of these young companies are developing cutting-edge cybersecurity solutions.
So it's like the little guys coming in to save the day.
Kind of, yeah. They're working on everything from AI-powered threat detection systems to new encryption algorithms to blockchain-based security solutions. They're constantly pushing the boundaries and coming up with new ways to stay ahead of the curve.
That's really cool. So it's not just the big players, it's also these agile startups that are contributing to Germany's cybersecurity landscape.
Exactly. And the government is actively supporting these startups through initiatives like the Cybergentur Deutschland, which provides funding and resources to promising cybersecurity companies.
So they're really investing in the future of cybersecurity.
They are, and that's encouraging because, as we've seen, this is a global problem.
Right.
The challenges that Germany's facing, the skills gap, the need for diversity, the constantly evolving threat landscape. These are all issues that every country is dealing with.
So what does all this mean for the person listening to this? How can they apply these insights to their own lives?
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in the specifics of Germany's approach, but I think the bigger picture is that cybersecurity is everyone's problem.
Right. It's not just a tech issue anymore. It's a human issue.
Exactly. So what are some things that people can do right now to, be more cyber aware?
Well, I think one of the key takeaways from this report is the importance of staying informed.
Okay.
Like you mentioned, those websites, golem.de and High Security, those are great resources for staying up to date on the latest cyber threats.
Mm-hmm.
But you can also find a lot of good information on government websites like the BSI here in Germany.
Right, the Federal Office for Information Security.
Exactly. Or in the U.S., you have the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA.
Okay. So there are resources out there for people.
Absolutely.
But it's not just about reading articles and, absorbing information, right?
No, you have to be a critical thinker too.
Okay. How do you do that?
Well, the report talks about the dangers of misinformation and propaganda.
Mm.
Especially online, you have to be careful about what you believe.
Right.
So question your sources, evaluate the evidence, don't be afraid to be skeptical.
Especially those claims that sound a little too good to be true.
Exactly.
Trust but verify, right?
Exactly.
But let's be real, not everyone has the time or the energy to become like a cybersecurity expert. So what are some simple things that people can do to protect themselves? Well, the report emphasizes good digital hygiene.
Digital hygiene, I like that.
Yeah, think of it like washing your hands. It's a simple habit that can make a big difference.
Okay.
So in the digital world, that means creating strong passwords, being careful about what information you share online, keeping your software up to date.
So all those annoying software update reminders, they're actually there for a reason.
Exactly. They're trying to protect you.
Wow, who knew?
But yeah, it's all about taking those small steps to reduce your risk.
Okay, that makes sense. But what about the really scary stuff like, AI-powered attacks and quantum computing?
Yeah, that's getting into the realm of future threats, and the report doesn't really delve into that too much.
Okay.
We can sort of extrapolate from what we know.
Okay.
AI is a powerful tool. It can be used for good or for evil.
Right.
So as AI systems become more sophisticated, we have to be aware of the potential for misuse.
Right.
Same thing with quantum computing. It's still early days, but it has the potential to crack a lot of the encryption that we rely on today.
So it sounds like we're always going to be playing catch up with the bad guys.
In a way, yeah. Cybersecurity is a constantly evolving field. There's always something new to learn, something new to worry about.
So we can't just set it and forget it. We have to stay engaged.
Exactly. And that's where I think the report's emphasis on collaboration is so important.
Okay.
Cybersecurity is not something that any one person or one organization or even one country can solve on their own.
Right.
We need to work together, share information, learn from each other.
It's like a global community coming together to protect our digital future.
Exactly. And that brings us to a final thought for our listeners.
Okay.
This report focused on Germany, but what about your country?
Yeah.
What are the unique cybersecurity challenges and solutions in your part of the world?
Right.
How can you contribute to creating a safer, more secure digital environment for yourself and your community?
That's a great point. Those are some really good questions to think about.
Yeah, we've only scratched the surface here. There's so much more to explore.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the world of German cybersecurity.
My pleasure.
And to all our listeners out there, remember, staying safe online is an ongoing process. So stay informed, stay vigilant, and stay curious.